Don't overthink the fine print. Just sign it and enjoy the ride. That's how he said it. Smile, gold watch. The kind of voice that makes you think you're being generous and threatened at the same time. He pushed the glossy folder across the table like a prize. The contract inside had a buyout clause. Leave early, lose 6 months, pay, and every unvested option. Yeah. Golden promotion, golden handcuffs, and I'm 27, a product analyst in London. I rent a 1-bed in Bethnal Green with a leaky window I've learned to sleep through. Half my paycheck goes on rent and utilities, the rest pays for groceries, and the odd therapist visit when spreadsheets feel like people. That's the setup. Vulnerable, yes. Ambitious, obviously. Desperate enough to think a promotion might finally mean sleep that isn't full of overdraft nightmares. NNHE called it the next step. HR called it a strategic move. My colleagues called it a congratulations email. I called it home the week they offered it for the first time. Yeah, the window was still leaking, but I poured myself a cup of instant coffee and for a second, pictured a different life. A desk near the window. A title on my resume that didn't make recruiters roll their eyes. Champagne, maybe, at some point. Real, stupid adult things. NNBUT, then I read the clause. And the champagne popped in the atrium and sounded like a trap snapping. And that's when I knew something was wrong. NNTHE contract lived in my bag for 2 days before I dared look at it again. I'd carry it like a forbidden receipt, fingers worrying the edges until they left tiny ridges in the cardboard. At night, I'd unfold it on the kitchen table under the cold bulb, paper rustling, kettle humming, London sirens like a distant metronome. I circled phrases: irrevocable, buyout offset, forfeit of options. Words that felt less like legal terms and more like shackles. I mean, honestly, who writes this to someone at my level? Who makes leaving cost you half a year's life? I texted a friend. Is this normal? She replied, no, that's not normal. Get a lawyer. Any man I need BUT before I called anyone I noticed the post-it. Bright yellow, stuck under my keyboard, little handwriting. Check page 4. Don't be naive. No signature, no emoji, just that. My chest went cold. Someone else had flagged the same part. Someone else had felt that prick of being offered a shiny thing that wasn't meant to free you. And that was the moment I stopped pretending it was just paperwork. NNTHE office smelled like lemon cleaner and burnt coffee when they called me into HR. Lavender air freshener, fake comfort, and 2 well-practiced smiles. This is for your own good, one of them said, leaning in like a friend. Don't sabotage your future. She said it like a warning wrapped in kindness. I laughed, because what else do? You smile and try not to shake. You should be grateful, my boss added later, in the corner office with the big glass window and the city in the background. He checked his watch as if the time confirmed his mercy. Not everyone gets this chance. His watch glinted. It felt like a symbol at that point. Wealth, control, the meter of seconds he used to count other people's choices. And that was the moment the watch stopped being a watch. And Friday drinks were a show. Cheap champagne in plastic flutes. The atrium full of people pretending office culture is casual. He clinked his glass and announced, loud enough for the floor and the investors on video. She's accepted. We've secured her loyalty. Laughter. Applause. My mouth moved for the photo, and my stomach dropped. I hadn't signed. I hadn't done anything but breathe and stand there like a mannequin. And I recorded a voice note that night. Feels ridiculous to say I recorded my own fear, but I needed to hear my own voice. If I sign, I'm stuck. If I don't, I lose everything. The voice note sounded small, but saving it felt like a promise to myself. Like, if I forget what scared me, this little file would remember. NNSO. I started a folder. Screenshots of Slack jokes, where he called people assets. A photo of the post-it. The champagne cork from the announcement. Yeah, I kept it. Don't judge. My keycard. Small objects that suddenly meant something. Evidence feels silly until it's the only thing standing between you and being gaslit. And that was the moment the pile stopped being junk and started being a ledger. After that, every little sound in the office felt like a countdown. Slack pings, the ding of the lift, heels on the marble, each one a little buzzer in my chest. Paranoia became normal. The elevator doors closing felt like a trial closing. I would stand in the atrium and pretend the sunlight bouncing off the glass was nothing more than daylight, when actually it felt like a spotlight. One evening, I casually asked a senior on the team, over drinks, "Have you ever seen a buyout clause like this?" He looked me in the eye, lowered his voice. "Don't poke it. It's how they weed out the weak." He ordered another beer, left it at that. That pull, "don't poke it," says more than any presentation slide ever could. It means, keep your head down, or you'll be an example. And that was the moment I learned this was systemic, not just personal. Monday morning, he cornered me by the lifts. His cologne hit first, because of course it did. "Don't overthink the fine print," he said again, like a mantra. "You'll ruin this for yourself." His hand lingered on my shoulder a beat too long. I laughed it off, because smiling buys you time. It does. Temporarily, NNHR, bless them, did check-ins that felt less like care and more like surveillance. "You seem hesitant," they'd say, like hesitation is a character flaw. "We don't want you to get a reputation." Reputation, in their language, equals risk. Risk equals consequences. It's amazing how fast politeness can turn into pressure. And that was the moment I understood the language they use. It's not about me. It's about the story they want to tell. Then came the all hands. Full atrium. Daylight blinding into the glass. The stage set like a product launch. He introduced me with that same grin. The line rehearsed. "She's committed to us for the long term." People clapped. Cameras flashed. I stood there and felt a hollow ache because my consent hadn't even been part of the script. And I scrolled through Slack that night. "Cheap talent," one line said. "If you want freedom, don't come here." Another. I exported the threads, labeled them, added them to the folder. The cork was in a Ziploc now, labeled with a Sharpie, May 5th, announcement. The post-it lived in the front page of my notebook, and that was the moment I stopped saving receipts and started building a case. And at HR's push on Friday, the pen hit the contract. That metallic chill. For a second, I hovered. 6 months, pay, a corner desk, rent covered, immediate security. I could have signed and called it a trade-off. Plenty of people do. Plenty of people survive. But what's survival if you trade your voice for the illusion of safety? I put the pen down. "I'll need legal review," I said. My voice was colder than I expected. Their smiles thinned. "You're making a mistake," one of them said, and the air felt thinner, like glass about to crack. And that was the moment I realized I couldn't be the only one who chose not to blink. I went to a lawyer, stern, tired, smelled like espresso and old books, made me feel not alone in the way a stranger's expertise can. He read the clause, tapped the page with his pen. "They can make leaving expensive," he said, "but they can't legally force you to stay." Translation: legality doesn't stop leverage. Leverage is psychological. Leverage is fear. And that was the moment I knew I needed leverage too. NNHI's advice was blunt. Walk now before you sign. Or sign and be essentially owned for 6 months. Either way, get leverage. I left with that word ringing in my head like currency. I kept thinking of all the small things they'd used. Smiles, phrases, the watch. I thought about how power often sounds like generosity. Back at the office, he drifted by my desk like a shadow that smelled like aftershave. "This is protection," he murmured. "We're giving you stability." I wanted to laugh. Protection sounded like a bribe delivered in a velvet voice. He'd say things like, "Without me, you're nothing," and people would nod. Toxic lines are persuasive when repeated enough. And that was the moment I started cataloging his lines as evidence. NNTHE week blurred into tactics. I saved Slack messages, screenshot after screenshot. I pulled up old meeting transcripts. I wrote down things colleagues had whispered. I labeled everything. The folder became meticulous. No longer a panic pile, but a dossier. The champagne cork, the post-it, my key card, screenshots, the voice note where my voice cracked. Each item a point on a scale. On a Thursday investor call, he introduced me as secured talent to a room full of faces watching on a huge screen. He said secured like a noun, like people are inventory. I clicked record and unmuted. "Actually," I said, louder than I'd planned, "I haven't signed. This clause is a trap." Silence. Then a cough. Then 2 whispers. The chat went wild with questions. He composed himself, said I was confused, called it a misunderstanding. And that was the moment I realized public pressure can flip the script. NNHR rushed to spin the narrative. Investors pinged their assistants. The office hummed with new energy, uneasy energy. My colleagues looked at me like I'd either ruined something or saved someone, depending on their appetite for drama. Either way, the story shifted. I didn't sleep well that night, too wired, too exposed. But for the first time in months, I felt less like prey and more like someone with a plan. Evidence is oddly comforting. It's proof that fear has a shape, and that shapes can be shown. After I spoke up, the tone changed. The gentle reminders got sharper. "We care about you," HR sent in an email that read like a threat. My desk felt empty. People stopped sitting near me. Or maybe I noticed where their chairs were empty, because I was watching for patterns now. When someone hummingly said, "You made waves," I thought, "Yup." Waves nen, THE week escalated fast. My boss tried to gaslight. Perception is reality. He told anyone who'd listen, like a mantra that absolves you of truth. He tried to make it about optics. My instability was the problem. Classic move. Flip the blame. He dropped lines in Slack like confetti, jokes about loyalty and commitment, little needles meant to prick and distract. I saved each needle, and that was the moment I learned how resilient a narrative is until someone interrupts it. And I booked another lawyer consult. This one cost half a month's rent, but felt worth every penny. I showed him the post-it, the cork, the chat exports. He nodded, slow and grave. "You have a case worth showing. Not everyone will stand with you, but this will make them look. Lawyers are, by nature, dispassionate. That's useful when your world feels performative." Then the day came when he tried to corner me in front of the team. All hands again, him with the mic, me in the front row like some trophy. "She's committed," he announced. I mouthed something under my breath. "I haven't signed," and a teammate mouthed back, "We know." That simple act, someone lifting a hand, was licensed to speak up. And that was the moment solidarity started to matter. An NWE flooded HR's inbox with requests for review. We doctored timelines. We asked for independent audits. It wasn't heroic. It was practical. Evidence plus pressure equals movement. The investors pinged HR pinged the legal counsel. The machinery of corporate self-preservation kicked in. NNTHAT night. I recorded a note and uploaded it to a cloud folder with redundancy, because yes, I'd seen enough shows where people lose a drive. I put the cork in a small box and wrote the date on a sticker. Rituals are weirdly grounding. I was no longer just collecting crumbs. I was building a narrative that others could read and verify. Then I decided to stop hiding. The quarterly all hands felt different. The air charged, the glass gleaming, cameras rolling. I walked up and held the printed page with the buyout clause. "I haven't signed," I said, loud enough for the live stream. "This clause makes leaving unaffordable. That's not a promotion, that's leverage." My voice was steady, my hands were not NNGASPs. A rustle, a manager coughing. He tried to grin and call it confusion. He tried to salvage it with charm. But that charm had been overused. People had receipts now. Another analyst read a Slack string out loud. Someone else shared an email thread. The room filled with small truths that pierced the careful lie. And that was the moment his mask came off. Within days, there were emails and internal notes and the familiar euphemism, taking leave, and his watch was gone from the desk. HR scheduled reviews. The legal team pinged me for my documents. It was messy and not exactly a clean victory. People whispered behind my back. Some called me reckless. Some called me brave. I didn't feel either. I felt exhausted, relieved, drained, and I resigned a few weeks later. I could have stayed and worked the internal channels, but the idea of tying myself to a role that once tried to own me felt worse than the uncertainty. I boxed my plant and my mug and my key card, slid it across reception, and left my corner light as a quiet gesture. Now I freelance. Money's tighter. The quiet is louder. Sometimes I still hear his phrase in the back of my head. Perception is reality. I shrug. Reality is what you and others can prove. Evidence matters. NNSO. Here's what I'll leave you with, because I need to know what you'd do. If someone handed you a promotion that came with golden handcuffs, pay, title, a desk with a view, but the cost was your freedom to walk away, would you sign? Or would you keep the receipts and risk everything to not be owned?